Hello, Quiet Warriors. How's it going? It's me, Scott. I'm glad that you're here to join us. Today we're going to talk about decision making. I'm just going to teach kind of a little class on some a technique that can help in making better decisions. We make decisions every day. That's not. That's a common thing. You know, we wake up, choose what we're going to wear, we choose what we're going to eat. But sometimes there are big decisions that we have to make. And I think that's a big part of being a good quiet warrior is making good decisions. I mean, our decisions a lot of times don't just affect us, but they affect our family, they can affect our friends, and in some situations can even affect like our parents. And some of them, as our influence grows and stuff like that, they can also affect even our community. So this is just it's a technique, something that you can kind of look at and think and utilize and take some of these ideas. I'll probably post some of this stuff so you can see a little more clearly as we go, but just post some of this stuff so it can kind of help you, again, make some of these bigger decisions that come down. Like a big decision there's no rule of thumb to a big decision. Some people, a big decision could be buying a car, which I consider that a big decision. And some people might consider like where they're going to go to school or where they're going to help where their kid's going to go to school or something. All of that is part of making, these kind of life-altering watershed type decisions. And so with that, I've got this whiteboard behind me. I'm going to utilize it to, how do I say this? Utilize it to illustrate or to write down some of these things so we can kind of walk through this decision-making technique, if you will. So I'm sitting in a chair, I'm going to move it up, and I'm going to get over here to my whiteboard. As you can see, I have up on the whiteboard, these are kind of the steps in making a decision. First, I'll just kind of walk through these steps really quick and orient you to them, and then after that, we'll talk a little bit about what it means and help us kind of understand in the decision-making process. So the first thing is there's triggers. I'll explain what that means, and we're identifying what it really is, what the problem really is, what our objectives is with the decision that we're trying to make. What our options are, and then over here it's kind of hard to see. I can kind of twist this a little bit over there. It says select and commit. So once we understand our options, then we just want to select the option and commit to that option. And so let's just kind of start though here with triggers, and let me talk a little bit about what that means. Triggers in a decision are things that come up. It can be really just about anything, but a lot of times they're kind of like life-altering situations. Sometimes it might be we get older, we're going to get married, we want to have a companion. We might wreck our car and we're like, oh man, I need to get a new car, or I need to get transportation. There's multiple different types of things that are triggers. I wrote down a couple of them, and so it could be something like an accident. Like an accident could be a trigger. So accident. Hopefully you can see this. If you can, I'll post on that. I know that red doesn't show up very well. I'll just use blue. It seems to work the best. So, like an accident.
Turn the light on. Nope.
And then, something breaks. That's kind of like along the accident. Like we have a realization. Like, oh my goodness, you know what? I'm not. I'm not being able to make ends meet. Realization. Sometimes I need that squiggly line to go underneath there so I can spell these right. We might just, wake up one day and be like, look, I want more. There's more out there to life. I want more. And so it's just kind of a desire for the better. And then last thing is kind of sometimes we might be worried that we're going to lose something. Like for instance, someone might wake up in the morning and think, oh my goodness, if I don't do something more with my life, or if I don't change my eating habits or my health, I could lose my health. I could get sick. I could get in worse conditions. So kind of a fear of loss can be a trigger. Now there might be other triggers out there. These are just some that I thought of. But fear of loss is a big one. There's a lot of things that kind of trigger a big decision. And these are just some, again, that I kind of brainstormed and thought of. But you might be able to think of some other things. There's some things that happened in your life that that led to me making a big decision. So I'm going to kind of just, in doing this, I'm going to use like an example I think that we can all understand in decision making. But let's just use an example of like, when we had an accident like with our vehicle, our car broke down, or we had, we were in an accident with another car. The first thing that happens is the car breaks, and let's just say that it's total. That you are forced. You can no longer utilize that car. You're kind of forced into a decision, right? You have to figure out what you're going to do. You have a problem that you have to figure out a solution to. So we're going to use the example of an accident. But the thing is, a lot of times the first thing that happens, like just say if you break your car, the first thing we probably automatically think to do is, like, well, I'm down a car, I just need to get a car, right? That's kind of what that would be like my automatic response, I think, that we have. But what I think is a good way to do is to take a step back and really evaluate what did you lose when your car broke. And that's where we come down to this ID. You need to ID really what the problem is. It's not necessarily that you're down a car, although that is a problem, but what did that car really provide for you? Provided transportation. So really what you're down is transportation, not necessarily a car. And that's kind of what we want to do in this phase of the decision-making process, is we want to ID what the real problem is. What am I really missing here? Am I missing, again with the car, I'm missing transportation. But there are other things that are kind of part of that. So I took some minute to kind of explain this a little bit. It's what you want to do in these situations is take a step back. It's not the thing itself that you lost, but what is it really? You've lost a function. There's usually a function that's involved, maybe you've lost or that is needed to gain. It's what its value is, like what it means to you. Those are kind of things that you're looking for. One way to kind of maybe even help understand this a little bit more is, you guys have probably all heard of Maslow's hierarchy of life or hierarchy of needs or something like that. It's usually a pyramid, and I can't remember the entire pyramid, but down here is usually safety and food and water, things that the bare necessities of life, and then there's belonging. And then, I can't remember what the next step, love, and then self-actualization. All of those things can kind of, when you kind of understand that and look at your problem in that light, you can start to see, what am I really missing? You kind of get in past the thing and what that thing really is for you. So again, the car, if we wrecked our car, we're really down transportation. That's the main thing that we've just lost, is transportation. And so, in doing this is really kind of an important tip. And I took some notes to prepare for this. It says, I wrote, don't evaluate whether it's good or bad. A lot of times we get into those kind of decisions of is this good or is this bad? Well, try to put that away and start to think, what do I really need? What is it? What's really happened? What is my real problem? And it's okay. Sometimes we get things in our head that we think, oh, you know what? I lost my car, so I don't need a car. I can do without or whatever. But what we really need to focus in on again is what am I down? What am I lost? Or what do I want to gain? And really get beyond a college education. If we were hey, I really want to gain a college education. What are you really trying to get with that college education? What is the outcome that you're looking for? What is the value that you're looking for? What is the status or things like that? What are you really looking for that you're down? And so with that, once we kind of understand and ID the problem, the next step is what we want to do here. And this is kind of where I alluded to and is we want to understand our objectives in the decision. What are our objectives? What do we want to accomplish in this decision? And there's a lot of them that a lot of times it's not just one thing. And again, coming back, we've ID'd the problem using our example of we've wrecked our car. And so, what we're down is transportation. And so our objective, one of our objectives probably is to get transportation. right? So we want to be able to start thinking about what are those things that we need, right? So our objectives usually are a need, but it doesn't just end there, right? Like using the car as an example, when we, in just 1 second, Claire, you can go upstairs. My daughter's down here, and she wanted to kind of see what was going on, and I'm glad that she's here, but she needs to go to bed. All right, I love you. Okay, so, but what objectives are is a lot of times, what are our needs? Again, coming back to the example of wrecking a car, we wrecked our car, we're down transportation, right? We need some transportation, so that's a need. That's a need. But just like with our car, there's certain things we want in our car, right? In a car, we have certain wants. Like I personally like having my wants. I like having a truck. I have the capacity to drive with it, but I also like, I'm gonna be real. There's some style to it. There's kind of a style that fits me in driving a truck that I want, I guess, to portray to other people about myself. There's certain things out there, and so there's needs, there's wants, and then there's concerns. There's things that you're concerned about in your objectives. The concerns might be like, I'm concerned about being able to afford my transportation, right? Though that's a concern that you have. And so a lot of times what people do in this situation, and this isn't a bad thing, is we write out pros and cons, right? We write out the pros and cons of a decision. But a lot of times with a pro and cons list, is what we're doing is we're fixating on one thing. We're not broadening our mindset. We're just fixating on, I want this car or this car. But what I'm saying here is when you're really trying to understand your objectives, let's again use the car for things. So I'm going to use that as an example. But so my needs is I need transportation. But I don't want just any type of transportation. I want transportation that is convenient. I want some convenience. Hopefully I can spell this. Yes, I think that's how I spell it. I want convenience. I want to be able to come and go as I please, right? I want it to be affordable. Right? I want something that I can afford and, that I know that I can afford into the future. I also want something that's going to last a long time. That's something that has some longevity. That's not going to just break or stop working. I'll have to fix it later, or a couple of days or months or even a year. There's some longevity that I want in my transportation. I want something that's going to last. And I want something too. Maybe I'm a little vain, but I do like a little bit of style to what I do, right? I think everybody kind of has a certain style, a certain reputation, something they want to put out to the world that fits them. And so, I want to have something that has my style. And so these are objectives that I want to hit. Now these are they're specific, but they're also kind of vague. And so, I might get into transportation as like something that, moves from point A to point B. That's self-explanatory. But convenience, what do I mean by convenience? I want something that I can, that I don't have to call for, I don't have to call an Uber for, or I don't have to call for I want to be able to get in it and go, or get on it and drive, or whatever. That's what convenience means to me. Affordable, I have a certain cost or a certain price that I feel like is what I want. Like what I can afford day in and day out. Those that might get into affordable. This might be your budget, both purchase budget as well as monthly budget. Longevity, I might say, what? I want something that's going to last a certain amount of time. I want something that's going to be 10 years. That I don't have to replace it for most likely 10 years, or maybe 5 years, or maybe it's 3 years. Whatever that longevity is to you, but you're thinking out like, hey, I want something that's going to be reliable for that amount of time. And then, I want something that fits my style. I want something that is who I am. And maybe, again, don't pigeonhole yourself, but maybe your style is, hey, I want to be an Uber guy. I want to just, call an Uber, and that's my style. That's who I am. That's what I like, is using the internet to my benefit. So having a car or whatever is not, that's a cool style to me. That's something I want to project out into the world. And so, again, these are some of the objectives. What I've found in decision making is these usually are the topics that most people are interested in. Transportation, obviously, we put that in there. That's specific to our example. But like in convenience, people usually want to have something convenient, something that they're concerned about the cost of it, they're concerned about the longevity of it, and they usually have some type of concern about the style. Those are usually the things that go into your decision. Now, that's not everybody, and there might be other things that are out there. This list is not exhaustive, but just what I've seen, I've kind of found that these are a lot of the things that go into a decision making. And so a lot of times that's what people are concerned about when they're making decisions. And so once you kind of look at these, you can kind of say, what does this mean to me? And then how do I make that, how do I make that mine, right? Like what are the specific objectives that I want to have? Like again, with like transportation, and maybe we could add one more that I think that sometimes is kind of is safety. People are concerned about being safe and secure. I know that I am. I know that I am with my family. And so, again, some of this might seem very, very specific to transportation or to a car or something like that, but I think if you look at a lot of big decisions, these are the things that we're looking at in a lot of ways. Now, again, this isn't exhaustive, but it's something I think can help you, again, get the wheels going when you're thinking about objectives. And again, the objectives this is probably the most important part of the decision-making process. Well, these two actually are probably the most important part of the decision-making process. You really want to make sure that you ID the problem to the best of your ability. Like really uncover what it is that the situation that you're in, the decision that you're trying to make. Really understanding what it is. And then the next part is really understanding your objectives. What you really want to get out of that decision. How you want that decision, what you want it to make, what you want it to do, where you want it to take you. And again, I just use this list here, convenience, affordability. Sometimes what I use with this is instead of affordability as cost, like how much is it going to cost? Cost could be money, but it could also be time. It could be other resources. And so the thing here is you just got to be, and I forgot, value. One other thing is the value, what it means. And value, again, we use this as like dollars and cents, but value can be what's valuable to you. Time, money is valuable, but it could be memories. It could be certain things that have meaning to you, and that factors into your decision. And so again, these things here, like cost or affordability, longevity, style, safety, and value, and convenience, usually are the main objectives that are usually factored in to a decision. Now again, that's not always the way it is, but these are just some things that I've seen that seem to be the main objectives, is hitting these type of things. But here's where it gets interesting, and before we move on to the next step, not all objectives are created equal. And that's really important. Not all objectives are created equal. As you kind of fill out your list, parts of this list are going to become more important to you than the other parts. Again, people use like a pros and cons list. Say like pros that does this, con is this. This takes a step actually a little bit differently, and you start to list out your objectives, your wants, your needs, your wants, your concerns, and then you start to rate them. You start to rate them and rank them. So let's just say in this, as we've kind of done this, we're like, I want something that is reliable, right? That kind of comes into longevity. And that's my number one objective in buying a car. But you know what? The next thing in buying a car is I want it to be affordable. It's got to be affordable. And this is what I mean by affordable. And be specific. I'm just writing affordable, but be specific. It's got to be less than Is this less than or is that greater than? I can't remember. Less than $10,000 to purchase. And my monthly budget for it has to be less than, again, I think that's less than, I get those mixed up sometimes, but less than, $400 a month to operate it. That's my budget. And so that's what I mean by affordable. That's where I need it to be at. But then you might be like, the second thing is, that's really important to me. Maybe you're like a young guy and like you're not married and you want to pick up chicks or whatever you might be at. The next thing is I want some style. I want to look cool when I'm in this car. That's important to me. I want to look cool. I want to feel cool when I'm in this car. I want to be able to drive it and have turn heads or whatever. And sometimes we say stuff like that, and people might be like, "Man, that's crazy" or whatever. But that is the video on my screen is reversed. I'm sorry, Josh. I don't know how to fix that. Maybe I can fix it when we post it or whatever. I apologize for that. I don't know. Again, I don't know how I can fix that on this. But I guess I have to read Arabic or whatever. But again, like with style, that might be the next thing that you might be. Hey, I want something that looks cool. I want something that I can drive, that my friends are going to think is cool, that people are going to want to ride with me, stuff like that. So style might be the next thing, but you might get specific on style. I want it to be red. And I want it to be sporty, and I want it to, that's kind of that's my style or whatever. And again, I'm, this generic. Then the next thing is, you might be like, I want it to have some value, I want it to hold its value, right? I want something that's going to hold its value. And so you might be like, okay, value is the next thing. But what you're doing here, as you're doing this, let's just say you get 4 or 5 things and you kind of rank them like this. What you're doing is you're creating a filter. You're creating something that you can run some ideas through to see how well it fits up against what your objectives are. Now, one thing to kind of, and this is a little bit more difficult and a little more advanced, but this can actually help too, is to kind of ask yourself, how much more important is reliability than affordability? Because that will help you, right? Like it might be, reliability, and to put this in, sometimes you might be like 10 times or 10. That might be too much to like. It's not that much more, it's up here, but style is right here. Creating some type of like graph or some type of something you can look at. Like you might, maybe you put like reliability here, but then affordability is here. Whatever, something that makes sense to you. But the whole idea is you rank them, also be able to say like, hey, this one's way more important, or this one's not that much more important, but it's important. It's more important than this. But this one is a close second or a close third or something like that. Because what you're doing here is you're trying to create. What you're creating, what you're creating is a filter. You're creating a little filter that you can begin to start to brainstorm some ideas and some options that you can put through this filter. So, and that leads us to the next part. The next part is options. What are my options? So going back to our problem, the function that we're down, the function that we're missing, or the function that I want to obtain, and again, using this example, is transportation, right? Our transportation is what we're really trying to figure out. And so our options now become maybe more broad than just, hey, I need another car. I need transportation. What are some things that I can do for transportation? And so that's what we can start to think about. And we start to brainstorm. Hey, what are some ideas? What are some transportation options? And this is where you can start to really get, you can get kind of creative. And in brainstorming, again, you're thinking, I need to get from point A to point B. So you might be like, one option is a bike. I could get a bike. Right? And here's the thing, when we're starting to brainstorm options, it's good to have your filter, but maybe you kind of set your filter aside a little bit here and just brainstorm. And don't think whether it's good or bad, and don't try to evaluate your brainstorming. Just think, what are ways that I can get from point A to point B? So one way is a bike, car, right? Bus, scooter. That was one of my nicknames. I don't like that nickname, but it was one. You can really begin to just kind of come up with ideas. Ride share, like Uber. Motorcycle. Bum rides. Again, you can kind of start, ask your mom and dad for a ride, mom and dad. You just get that one wheel thing where you stand on it and you have the wheel between your legs and you can go down the road, but you get really creative. Like, hey, what's the transportation available to me, right? And the point here and the thing here with options is really brainstorm. Think about, okay, the function that I'm trying to really fulfill is transportation. What are the many options that I can think of for transportation? And you kind of might look at it, and some of these are very specific, right? Scooter, ride share, again, it's Uber, Lyft. There might be some other I don't know of any other newer ride share options, but motorcycle. But you might start to see some of these that you can get more specific in. These are a little more general, but you could be like, motorcycle. I hadn't thought about that. But you might come in, once you kind of get your list out, then you start running those ideas through your filter. How reliable is a motorcycle? Well, it starts, but reliability, and thinking about it, maybe I can't ride it in the wintertime. Maybe you can. Maybe there's a way of doing that. But you might be motorcycle, it's very affordable, but reliable, that's something, style, that's really cool. I'd pick up a lot of chicks if I rode a Harley Davidson or, whatever kind of motorcycle. And the value, they actually hold their value. Maybe that's not a bad idea. And you can kind of run it through and see how well it fits in through your filter. Now, here's just a tip. When you're creating your filter, a lot of times what will happen is after you create your options, your filter will change. And that's okay. That's totally okay. That's a good thing. You might actually start thinking, you know what? Reliability really isn't my number one thing. Really, the number one thing is maybe something that's not even on here. Maybe it's comfort. Absolute comfort. I want to be comfortable, And so riding a motorcycle is not comfortable to me. And maybe that becomes a higher objective that you want in your transportation. So you're thinking, this filter starts to actually become more crystallized as you start running your options through it. And that's okay, that's good. There's nothing, in any type of decision making, a lot of times it's very fluid. And you don't need to be, hammer down on yourself and I gotta hold myself to this. No, things come up. There's certain things that come up in our decision making that maybe we were suppressing, or it was down there and certain things needed to happen for it to come up and for us to understand. That's okay. That's part of the game. That's part of the decision-making process, and that's a good thing because you want to make a good decision. The whole thing, what this allows you to do is it allows you to take apart your decision and look at it. And look at it maybe in a different light and kind of, hold it up in a way and see the very different dimensions of that decision. And that's what we're doing with this. That's why it's a technique. It's not the end-all, say-all. It's a technique that you can utilize, again, to see your decision. Kind of lay it out there. I recommend, I'm doing this on a whiteboard, but I recommend for a decision, do this on an 8 by, a blank sheet of paper, 8 by 11 sheet of paper. And again, write these things out. Triggers. This is a trigger. Why am I thinking I need to make this decision? What's going on in my life? Did this break? Was there an accident? My wife come tell me if I don't lose 20 pounds that she's walking. What is it that's caused this for me to be in this situation to where I feel like I need to make a decision? And then really focus, what is the decision I need to make? What is the thing that I'm trying to accomplish? What's the thing that I'm missing? What is the primary thing that I'm trying to accomplish? And again, looking past the thing. Look past the thing and what is it? What's the value? What's the function? What's the thing that, I keep using that word thing, but what is it really? Not what it is, I guess, but what is it really? Again, like coming back to the example of the car. It's not that you're down a car, you're down transportation. And there's a big difference, right? The car is just a means of transportation. So what is it that you truly are missing or wanting? And what does that really look like? Again, let's use a college education. What are you really wanting to get? Are you want to really get the knowledge? Do you really want to get the status? Or do you really want to get the experience? There's something beyond a college education. There's meaning beyond what the thing is. And what's that meaning that you're trying to obtain? That's what you're trying to do when you're IDing the situation, the problem, the decision, the real thing that you're trying to decide on. And you got to spend some time on this and write stuff down. And if it doesn't seem right, dig a little bit deeper. Why is that? They talk about in Japan, they came up with the 5 whys. And so you say, why? You'd say, why is that important? And then you'd answer that question. And you say, well, why is that important? Till you get to the very bottom. After you ask those 5 whys, it's usually then you're at the very bottom, the meaning that you're really trying to find and trying to get. So then the next thing, once you kind of get that meaning, then it's a lot more easy to figure out what your objectives are. What are the things I want to get? What are the gates I want to go through and clear in order to make this decision a good decision? And what's important to me? How do I want to hit those gates with this decision? And are certain things on my list of objectives? Are there certain things that I'm willing to say, I don't need that, or I don't want that, or that's nice to have, but this right here is exactly what I have to have. I have to have this, and I have to have this, and I have to have those things. And you can go back and ask yourself, why do I have to have those things? And maybe that'll help clear up again the decision that you're making. But there's going to be certain things that I have to have it. Again, coming back to the car, maybe you're like me and have a family, I have 4 kids, and the cars that I have to buy, I'm like, I have to have a car that I can fit my family into. I have to. Because I don't want to leave one of them home. I can't leave one. The Health and Human Services would come and take my kids away or something. No, I'm just kidding. But I have to have, there's certain things you have to have. And then there's certain things that you might, again, coming back, what are the needs? What are the wants? What are your concerns? Write those down. And that'll help kind of flesh out what your objectives are. And once you kind of start to see your objectives, and again, just kind of a shortcut that can kind of help, not always, but can kind of help is again, convenience, cost, I put affordability, but convenience, cost, longevity, and value are usually the 4 things that people are concerned about when they're making a decision, a big life decision. But getting in and saying, what does this mean to me? What's the meaning behind value? What's the meaning behind cost? And being very specific in understanding that. And then once you kind of hit that filter, what you think is your filter, you write that down. And then rank those things. This is the most important thing. And it's really, really important. And in fact, it's way more important than the next thing. And if there's a way for you to kind of judge how much more important it is to you, write that off to the side of it. Or when I was learning this process, and I learned this process when I was in my master's degree at Brigham Young University, we used a system called the SATI system, where it was this guy, his name was Sati, and it's spelled Satty, was his last name, but he used his system was like a golf ball, a baseball, a softball, a volleyball, and a basketball. And like each one of those was like how much more important it is to them on that scale. So a golf ball is not very important, and a basketball is hugely important. And so that's how he would, help people make that decision, of how much, or excuse me, not this decision, but like rank certain things. Like this is a basketball. Nah, this one's a volleyball. This one's a softball. Or this one's a baseball. This one's a golf ball. So this one isn't as important, but this one is a basketball. If that helps you, awesome. If it doesn't, come up with another way of determining like what things are like. This is super, super important. So, and then once you get your filter, what you feel like you have your filter, then we can kind of start creating some options. And again, come back to that function. Come back to the idea of the problem. Kind of put your filter aside, because what you don't want to do is limit your options. At this time, this is a brainstorming time. You start laying things out, even if they're the craziest things you can think of. What, in this situation, again, on our example, we're using, transportation. What are certain ways that I can find transportation? Right? Maybe even, one thing, airplane, right? That sounds crazy, but maybe an airplane. That's not yourself, airplane. There we go. Excuse me. So, but that's the thing, is like, just start listing options. What are ways that I can get from point A to point B in this situation? Maybe if you're going to college, or like, I want to get a college education, or I want to be more educated. That's really what I'm concerned about, is getting more educated. What are my options? I could go to YouTube U, which is watching YouTube videos and learning topics and learning skills from that. If that's where you've identified your problem, is you need more education, but maybe I need more status. Well, college education is an option, but maybe, working towards promotion at work, working towards, there's multiple different ways of attaining status. Maybe running for city council or something like that, or, running for office. That would help bring more status. But the idea, again, is come back to what the real problem is, and then start to come up with options that you think would work, that you can come up with. Not that you think would work, that you can come up with. And then, once you're through that, start running it through your filter. Once you get down, give yourself a quota. Like, I got to come up with 10 different options before I'm going to start to evaluate. Once you come up with your 10 different options, and start running them through your filter. Okay, this is my filter. This is what's important to me, and this one's really important. You know what? This option here, bike. Bike isn't always reliable, right? Like a bike, yeah, it's cheap, it's easy to get going, but the chain can break. I'm not always reliable to ride my bike, meaning that, if I walk out and it's cold and I'm like, I'm not riding my bike, then it's not reliable, right? But, it's very affordable, and, it's kind of cool to ride your bike, right? I got cool style, and you know what? The value to cost ratio is pretty good. A bike costs me, let's say you go buy a really nice bike at, your local bike shop, and it costs you $500. But you're like, you know what? If I use it, the value to cost is actually pretty good. That's what I think with that. Give it a rating, or put it over to the side. But again, taking each one of those through your filter. But as you take it through your filter, and things start to come up, you're like, wait, that actually might help. That I didn't think about that. Add that to your filter. Fix your filter. Go back into your filter and think about it. Okay, you know what? Instead of reliability, really style is actually more important to me. I don't care if I have a super reliable car. I'll buy this 69 Corvette that I gotta fix up, that I don't know if it's always gonna be reliable, but it's dang cool. That might it might bubble up like, hey, this is really important to me. And so again, the idea is use your filter as your evaluator, don't get ahead of yourself and start thinking, oh, that's not going to work or whatever. Just take some time and really, really, really brainstorm some good ideas that, again, fit the problem or the decision that you're really making. And then running it through your filter. And then the last part here, and I've kind of saved this last part, I'm going to shift this over just a little bit. It's my, is the last thing you have to do, right, is you have to make the decision. And as you run these things through your filter, it will start to become clear. Oh, you know what? This is a good decision. And you'll be able to explain it to yourself. Now, that's the thing you want to do at the end when you're making that decision, is be able to explain it to yourself and for it to make sense. And then, for us that are married, explain it to your spouse for them to make sense too. So that I thought that this was important. But I thought that safety was a little more important than style. And you're right, okay, yeah. But my point in that is you gotta make a decision. And again, as you run your ideas through your filter, all of a sudden one will become more clear. And that's the one, if your heart, you have to make a decision. And here's the big part of decision making, is it's not here. It's usually here and here with decision making. And I can't tell you why. I've read some books on decision making where the guys are like, there's a thing in your brain that you might have read. Simon Sinek's talked about, start with why, and like how your brain's operated or how your brain's structured and stuff. I'm not a neuroscientist, but most decisions come from right here, not necessarily right here. And that's the thing, is you're running these things, something will be like, I feel good about that. That decision right there, I feel good about that. And, it might be a combination of these things. You might be like, I can actually combine some of these and run them through that filter, and that feels good. That feels like that will work. I like that. And once you kind of come across that option, that's when you select it, but you've got to commit. And that's really where the work begins. I mean, there's a lot here of the work, a lot of mental work, but you got to commit to it. I think it was General Patton said one time, I don't even know where he said it, I just remember hearing this quote, but he said something to the effect that a decision that is 70%, or a decision made with 70% of the data made and executed violently is going to win out on a decision with 100% of the data that's never executed, never made. And I think that's a really important part of this, is once we make that decision, hey, I feel good about this option. I've done my due diligence. I've really focused in and tried to understand what, this thing came up. I really tried to understand what the problem really is, what the decision I'm truly trying to make, really the meaning behind it, what I'm trying to accomplish. These are the things I really want to get out of this decision. These are the things that I've really worked hard on figuring this out. And I brainstormed. I've really thought out some ideas. I've even gotten crazy and really thought out some of these ideas of what I can do. And this is the idea that I feel really good about. But that's the time where you've got to commit. You got to say, that's my choice. I'm doing it. I'm going to make it the best decision I've made. One of the things I've seen in my life, and I'm sure that some of you may have seen also in yours, is that is the key to a good decision. And a lot of times, after you've done your diligence, after you've really tried to learn and understand, it's when people just say, "Look, that's my decision, and I'm running with it, and I'm going to make it the best decision. I'm not just going to let it become the best decision, but I'm actually going to make it the best decision." And I'm going to put the effort into making it a good decision. So guys, I hope you've got, that's kind of it for tonight. I hope you've been able to get something out of this. This is a technique. Hopefully you'll be able to kind of take it back, utilize it as you're kind of looking again at some of your bigger decisions that you're looking to make. Maybe it's like a career move. Maybe again, thinking about maybe going back to school. Maybe it is buying a house or buying a car. Maybe it's a major purchase that you're looking to make. hopefully this technique will help you out, be able to really kind of think about, like, be able to take that decision apart, really try to understand it, and then be able to really understand what those options are that you can be able to make a good decision. I use this a lot in my decision making, and I've done some coaching with some people, and I've walked them through this similar type of format to help them, and I know that it works. I know it can be really helpful, and so hopefully it's helpful to you. Last thing I'll leave you with is, if you're kind of looking like, hey Scott, this is really good, I really enjoyed this presentation. If you're looking for kind of some ideas, like, how do I'll try to put some of this stuff out, like some of my notes and some of the stuff that I've written on this whiteboard. But if you want a book that can really help you, I think it's called Smart Choices. I got some of this stuff I've kind of taken a little bit from them. They actually have a model that they use called the PROACT model, which is a fantastic model. This is very similar to what they do. And so it's a great book. Again, I think it's Smart Choices. It might be Smart Decisions, but I think it's Smart Choices. You can find it on Amazon. But I appreciate you guys being here tonight. Thanks. I'm just going to give a shout out to Josh and Chase. Thank you so much. Thanks, Steve, for being on here. Emilio, I really appreciate you guys. I know that 8 o'clock at night, probably a lot of you guys have kids that need to get to bed. You guys are quiet warriors, right? We do what we need to do, and I really appreciate it. And next week we'll do something different. What I'm kind of hoping to do is like have Stories with Scott on every other week. So we'll do Stories with Scott, and then the week after we'll have another class. I'm not 100% sure what our next class will be, but I kind of want to get out into the community a little bit, see if we can find some people that can come and give us some classes on some things that will, again, help us be quiet warriors. But thank you, gentlemen, and have a great night, and we'll see you guys next week. All right. Good night, guys.